The sirens had barely faded when Officer Daniels pulled the cruiser up to the curb outside City Hall. The evening air was thick with humidity and leftover tension from a summer storm that had passed an hour ago. Rainwater still shimmered in the streetlights, turning the pavement into a mirror that reflected flashes of red and blue. Dispatch had called in a suspicious person report, a man loitering around cars in the executive parking lot. Nothing unusual, nothing dramatic. Yet Daniels felt the usual rush of adrenaline that came whenever they were about to confront someone. His partner, Miller, unbuckled his seatbelt and leaned forward, scanning the sidewalk. "There," he said, pointing toward a tall figure in a gray polo shirt and dark jeans. The man was standing near a black sedan, keys in hand, glancing at his phone. He didn't look nervous, didn't look dangerous. But to Daniels, that calmness sometimes meant confidence, or trouble. "Let's check it out," Daniels muttered, stepping out of the car. The door slammed shut with the heavy, metallic echo that always made his pulse quicken. He adjusted his belt, feeling the weight of the handcuffs, the radio, the badge. Each one a reminder of control, of duty, of doing things by the book. Miller joined him, hand resting lightly on his holster, just in case. As they approached, the man looked up, clearly noticing them now. His eyes were calm, almost patient, as though he had been expecting someone. Daniels stopped a few paces away. "Sir," he began, his voice clipped, "professional, we've had reports of suspicious activity in this area. Mind telling us what you're doing here?" The man blinked once, then offered a polite smile. "I'm unlocking my car," he said, gesturing toward the sedan. His tone was even, almost amused. He held up his key fob, pressing it once. The car chirped in confirmation. "Is there a problem, officers?" Daniels exchanged a quick glance with Miller. "You work here?" he asked. "Yes, I do. Name?" "Marcus Hill." Daniels nodded, pretending to check his notepad though he hadn't written anything. "And your reason for being here after hours, Mr. Hill?" The man's eyebrows lifted slightly. "I had a meeting," he said simply. "Long one. I'm heading home." Something about his tone rubbed Daniels the wrong way. Too calm, too sure of himself. He'd seen that before. People who thought they could talk their way out of anything. He felt a spark of irritation flicker in his chest. "I'll need to see some ID," he said. Marcus didn't argue. He reached into his pocket slowly, deliberately, and pulled out a slim leather wallet. As he flipped it open, the gold edge of a badge caught the light, but Daniels didn't notice right away. He was too focused on the ID card, until his partner's quiet gasp made him look closer. The man's credentials were crystal clear. Marcus Hill, it read in bold type. Underneath, in polished silver letters, Chief of Police, City Police Department. Daniels' throat went dry. He looked up, then back down again, hoping he'd misread it. The man, the chief, was watching him, expression still calm but with a faint edge of disappointment around his eyes. "Sir," Daniels began, voice suddenly unsteady. "Chief Hill, we didn't realize." Chief Hill held up a hand. "Relax, officer. You're responding to a call. You followed protocol. I respect that." His voice was steady, firm, but there was something underneath, a quiet disapproval that cut deeper than anger ever could. "But," he added softly, "you might want to ask yourself what made me look suspicious to you." Daniels didn't answer. He couldn't. The sound of distant traffic filled the silence like static. He wanted to say it was the report, the setting, the time of night, anything but what the chief was implying. Miller cleared his throat, trying to recover. "We just wanted to make sure everything was secure, sir. There've been a few break-ins near the lot recently." "I'm aware," the chief said. "That's why I was checking the new camera installations before leaving." He slipped his wallet back into his pocket, the motion slow and deliberate. "Next time, before you jump to conclusions, take a moment to observe. You'd be surprised how much you can learn by listening first." Daniels felt the heat rise behind his ears. He wanted to sink into the wet pavement. "Yes, sir," he murmured. Chief Hill looked at them both one last time, not with anger, but with the kind of disappointment that felt heavier than any reprimand. "Drive safe, officers," he said, walking past them toward his car. The automatic headlights flickered on, throwing pale light across the soaked asphalt. As the sedan pulled away, Daniels stood frozen, the hum of the engine fading into the night. The reflection of his patrol lights shimmered on the puddles at his feet. He glanced at Miller, who avoided his gaze, pretending to check his radio. For the first time in years, Daniels felt the badge on his chest grow uncomfortably heavy. The drive to the station was quiet, too quiet for Daniels' liking. Rain pattered lightly against the windshield, smearing the reflections of passing streetlights into golden streaks. Chief Hill sat in the back seat, his posture relaxed, almost casual, as though the awkward confrontation outside had never happened. Daniels kept glancing at the mirror, half expecting him to start talking, half hoping he wouldn't. His partner Miller looked just as tense, hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. When they pulled up to the station, the building loomed in the glow of sodium lights, tall, angular, its glass facade reflecting the city's restless energy. Daniels had worked here for nearly 10 years, but that night, stepping out of the cruiser beside the chief, he felt like a rookie again. The automatic doors slid open with a soft hiss, welcoming them into the familiar hum of keyboards, ringing phones, and murmured voices. Chief Hill moved through the lobby with the quiet authority of someone who didn't need to announce who he was. Officers and clerks straightened as he passed, their conversations dropping to whispers. Daniels followed a few steps behind, feeling the weight of 100 curious eyes. It was like walking behind a storm. Everyone sensed something was off but didn't dare to ask. Conference room, Hill said over his shoulder, his tone even, almost conversational. Let's have a word before the shift briefing. Daniels nodded automatically. He wasn't sure what was coming, but he doubted it would be pleasant. Inside the conference room, the overhead lights hummed faintly. The space was sterile. Long metal table, chairs lined with military precision, a whiteboard filled with notes from earlier meetings. Chief Hill took the seat at the head of the table and gestured for them to sit. For a long moment, he said nothing. The silence stretched, deliberate and uncomfortable. Daniels felt his chest tighten. He tried to steady his breathing, counting seconds in his head. Finally, the chief leaned back, folding his hands on the table. So, Hill began, voice calm, walk me through what happened tonight. Daniels hesitated. Sir, we received a call from dispatch about a suspicious person in the executive parking lot. We responded according to. I know what the report said, Hill interrupted gently. I want to hear what you saw. Not the protocol, the perception. The question landed heavier than expected. Daniels swallowed hard. We saw a man near a car. It was late. The caller mentioned he didn't look like he belonged there. Hill's eyes narrowed just slightly. Didn't look like he belonged, he repeated, as if tasting the words. Interesting phrasing. Miller shifted uncomfortably. We didn't mean any disrespect, Chief. We were just following the lead. It wasn't personal. I believe you, Hill said. But perception always feels personal when you're on the other end of it. He stood and walked to the window, gazing down at the dark parking lot below. You know, I've worked in law enforcement for 30 years. I've worn this badge longer than you've been alive, Officer Miller. And yet, tonight, I was a suspicious person, outside my own building. Neither of them spoke. The chief turned back, his expression unreadable. I'm not angry. I've seen worse. But I want you to think about something. How fast did your instincts tell you to act? And what shaped those instincts? Daniels looked down at the table, tracing a scratch in the metal with his finger. We didn't mean to profile anyone, sir. I know you didn't mean to, Hill said softly. But intent doesn't erase impact. Our job isn't just to enforce laws, it's to represent fairness, even when adrenaline kicks in. He walked back to the table, placing his hands flat against its surface. Let me tell you a secret about leadership, officers. Authority doesn't come from how many people fear you, it comes from how much people trust you. And trust begins when people believe you see them for who they are, not what they look like. Daniels finally met his gaze. There was no anger there, just a kind of steady disappointment that felt worse than any formal reprimand. Hill sighed and reached into his jacket, pulling out a folder. He slid it across the table toward them. These are training reports from the last 6 months, he said. I've been tracking response patterns, incident data, and citizen complaints. You're not the only ones who act on assumptions. But that's exactly what I'm here to change. Miller glanced at the folder, uncertain whether to open it. You mean bias training? More than that, Hill replied. Perspective training. I want officers who question what they see, not to hesitate, but to think. If we lose the ability to question ourselves, we lose the right to protect others. The clock ticked somewhere behind them. The air in the room felt heavier, but clearer somehow. Hill straightened, his tone softening. You two made a mistake tonight. But you also have a chance to learn from it. I expect better. Not because I want perfection, but because the people outside this building deserve it. Daniels nodded slowly. Yes, sir. We understand. Hill gave a faint smile, the first of the night. Good. Then let's move forward. We've got a city to serve. As he left the room, Daniels exhaled for what felt like the first time in an hour. He looked at Miller, who still hadn't moved. The chief's words echoed in his mind, louder than any siren. Authority doesn't come from fear. It comes from trust. For the first time, Daniels realized that being a good cop wasn't just about catching the bad guys. It was about questioning the moments when you might be the one in the wrong. The next morning arrived gray and slow, the kind of morning that carried the weight of the night before. Daniels stood in front of his locker, the metallic door half open, staring at the reflection of his own face in the dull surface. He hadn't slept much. Every time he closed his eyes, Chief Hill's words echoed back at him. About perception, about trust, about the difference between authority and respect. He rubbed his temples, buttoned his uniform, and fastened his badge, but the usual sense of pride felt dimmer now. When he walked into the briefing room, the atmosphere was unusually subdued. Conversations quieted as Chief Hill entered, a folder tucked under his arm. He wasn't in his usual tailored suit today but in uniform, crisp, polished, and unmistakably commanding. The sight of him reminded everyone that he wasn't just a title or an office door, he was one of them, though clearly several steps above in discipline and presence. Morning, everyone, Hill began, his tone even. Before we get into the day's agenda, I want to address something important. It concerns all of us. Daniels felt the tension rise in the room like static. He shifted in his chair, his stomach twisting. Last night, Hill continued, some of our officers responded to a call outside this very building. It was handled according to procedure. But it also highlighted something deeper, something that procedure alone can't fix. He paused, letting the words hang. Around the table, no one spoke. Miller's gaze dropped to the floor. Daniels stared straight ahead, unable to meet the chief's eyes. I'm not going to name anyone, Hill said. That's not the point. The point is what happens next. We are protectors, guardians of this city, but we are also human. We bring our fears, our biases, and our assumptions into every encounter. And if we don't learn to confront them, they will define us more than our training ever could. His voice wasn't sharp or angry. It was calm, almost fatherly, and somehow that made it harder to hear. Daniels found himself gripping the edge of the table. Hill continued, pacing slowly. I've been in this department long enough to see how quickly judgment can cloud judgment. A man running isn't always guilty. A woman arguing isn't always resisting. And sometimes, a person standing by his car isn't suspicious, he's just tired after a long day. There was a quiet ripple of uncomfortable laughter, but it died quickly. I don't expect perfection, Hill said. But I expect awareness. From today onward, we'll begin new field training sessions, not to punish, but to rebuild how we see. Every officer, every rank. Including me. He stopped, looking directly at Daniels for the first time. The contact was brief but meaningful. Daniels swallowed hard. After the briefing, most of the officers filed out in silence, conversations muted and thoughtful. Daniels stayed behind, still seated, until the chief approached him. Walk with me, Hill said. They moved through the corridor lined with framed photos, past chiefs, commendations, and moments of pride frozen in time. The hum of the fluorescent lights filled the pauses between their footsteps. I wasn't sure I'd see you this morning, Hill said quietly. Daniels nodded. I thought about calling in sick. But that felt like running away. Hill gave a faint smile. Good choice. They stopped near the observation window overlooking the city streets below. Morning traffic was starting to build, people moving with purpose, unaware of the small reckoning happening inside the station. Last night hit you harder than you expected, didn't it? Hill asked. Daniels hesitated, then nodded. I thought I knew what doing the right thing looked like. But I realized I've been on autopilot for a long time. We all have. We act before we think. That's human nature, Hill said. But the badge asks us to rise above instinct. To pause. To see the person, not just the scene. Daniels took a breath. You could have written us up, suspended us. Why didn't you? Hill looked at him, eyes steady. Because shame doesn't teach. Awareness does. I'd rather you remember the lesson than the punishment. Daniels nodded, the words settling into him slowly, like rain soaking into dry ground. You're right. I've got work to do. We all do, Hill replied. That's what makes the job worth it. As they stood there, the morning sun broke through the clouds, cutting across the window in sharp gold lines. It illuminated the faint scratches on the glass, tiny imperfections that only appeared when the light hit them just right. Daniels thought about that, how flaws only revealed themselves when seen from a certain angle. Hill turned to leave, but before he did, he said, remember something, Daniels, real strength isn't in how fast you draw your weapon. It's in how long you can keep your hand off it. Daniels watched him walk away, the echo of his boots fading into the hum of the building. Outside, people crossed streets, cars honked, life went on. But inside, something had shifted, something fundamental, something necessary. That evening, as Daniels got into his patrol car again, the city didn't look the same. Every person on the sidewalk seemed more detailed, more real. Not suspects, not potential threats, just people, each with a story he didn't yet know. He started the engine, feeling the hum beneath his hands. For the first time in years, the badge on his chest didn't just feel like authority. It felt like a promise.